My goal for this year, I think I told you, is to say no more. And when I say my goal was to say no more, my goal was to say no more to things that don't matter.
I'm your host, Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident.
Zainab Bass. I'm an investment banker, predominantly helping companies sell their businesses. We moved up here 9 years ago because I was doing energy investment banking down in Houston, working 80, 90, 100 hours a week. We just got married, and I was kind of having like a early life crisis. I was like 25 years old.
What were you freaking out about?
I was freaking out about how I make this marriage sustainable and the burnout of the job and just feeling like I was growing up really quickly. And then when he brought up moving to Indiana, I was really afraid that I was going to take a huge career step back because, I just, worked for this big investment bank. It just had, all my colleagues were going at these big private equity jobs. My college roommate was in New York, about to go get her MBA at Harvard. And, you're in that mode
big names,
where
big
you're
lights. Yeah.
Big names, big lights. That's the life I've always wanted. First one to get married out of that crew. So I think there's a lot of different voices in my head. And then I was afraid that I was going to take a step back and kind of throw away what I'd done. But you don't realize what you want or maybe even need at an age that young.
Tell me a little bit about the environment you grew up in, and now you're in this 2-career home with young kids with a high internal motor.
Yes. Yes.
So what did you grow up in?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. I always tell everyone we're the product of our own baggage. I'm Pakistani. We are practicing Muslims. My mom was a stay-at-home mom who came over here, got married at 21 and came over to the States. My dad was going to college here and didn't really speak the language and was, I can't imagine how brave at that point she was. And I always felt like she didn't have any options if she wanted to, right? Because she came over here and, she just raised 4 kids spanning my sister's 9 years older than me. So standing a long time. And even if she wanted, when we left the house, I felt like she just, now what? And that is my driving motivation why I'm so career oriented. For good or bad. I just felt like sometimes she was lonely, she was bored. And I feel like if she wanted to take certain steps, my parents had a good marriage, but if she wanted to take certain steps, that wasn't an option. Culturally, means-wise, and I just grew up in a pretty strict household. A lot of pushback when I married Jordan because he's white, but I was always the one pushing boundaries. And that's so much the reason why the person I am today. I'm constantly pushing boundaries, and there's nothing I believe I can't do, but it also puts me in a bad spot sometimes.
Are there boundaries you feel like you've pushed that you've realized looking back you didn't need to?
Yes. I think there's a thin line between pushing and being aggressive and being an asshole. I think I was overcompensating at times when I was younger. And not that I'm unemotional. I'm, emotional. I have kids. I'm a mom. I care about that stuff. But I tend to have tunnel vision sometimes. And I think there's a right way to do things.
So tell me about Jordan's family and maybe some of his accidental expectations that he brought into your relationship.
I think the more things that we brought into was maybe our communication styles. But so Jordan grew up in small town Indiana, Delphi, Indiana, super small town on a farm. His parents weren't farmers. Graduating class was probably 70 kids, and a lot of them became farmers. So we couldn't have grown up more differently. But both his parents worked. Mom's a nurse, but that's the epitome. His mom, Ramona, is a saint. She's a nurse. She cares so much about people. She's so welcoming. She's the family host. She's a phenomenal cook. She really did it all. And that's what he saw growing up. I don't think you can realize, even now I'm like, man, Ramona, take a break. I'm exhausted watching you. But he grew up with a mom who did it all. Put herself back through school, became a nurse practitioner, but still cooked these extremely amazing meals and was present and was kind. And they had a support, her parents were close and his dad's parents were close. So it's not like they didn't have a support system. But I always say this to him as I don't think you realize how normal and fantastic a family you grew up in. The thing is, they didn't really like confrontation. So people might be mad and then they just kind of move on. My family was let's go 0 to 60 and say the most hurtful things we can say to each other and then pretend like it didn't happen. So when we started dating and we would like be in our different family dynamics, we were both uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. It's like, I'm a super outspoken person and I have trouble holding my opinions back. And maybe I should dial it down in front of your parents. And he was like, I am uncomfortable with like how aggressive you and your siblings are to each other. Our first few years of marriage, we struggle when it comes to the communication sometimes. Just because I'm just say what's on my mind, don't think about the consequences. But I also then want him to fight back.
Why? Why do you think you want him to fight back?
I don't know. I think it was like a form of love in our house, maybe. It's better than indifference. And I would sometimes take his silence as indifference. But his silence is him processing and him thinking about it. And that's how he deals with situation. He needs to take a step back and he analyzes. Whereas I just don't need that. So that's been the biggest thing, is like adapting both of our communication styles to kind of give each other what we need, you know? And I think he needs more positive reinforcement too. But in the dynamic of two working parents, two young kids, it's a ever-changing, kind of ever-growing process.
One of the things I've seen in my own marriage is when you get really busy, when both of you have big careers, you can try to be efficient with each other. And it's like relationship is not an efficient thing, but everything else is efficiency driven. This is my calendar. This is when I need to leave. This is the shortest distance between 2 points. What's going on for dinner? Can we reheat? Like everything is like you're trying to be efficient. And so then you step into your marriage and you're like, what is the shortest distance of what I need to communicate with you?
Agreed. And then it's just like managing logistics half the time and not having a real conversation. And then for me, I don't know, I don't feel like I have to come home from work and talk about work. I talk about work all day, every day. Half my work is in marketing and then talking about more work after work. But Jordan really loves to do that, which I appreciate. I'm his biggest confidant and he wants to like run through what happened and his reaction and what his reaction should be. And I kind of want to turn my brain off. But then realizing like what each other needs, right? And sometimes he likes to know what's going on in work. It makes him feel more included in what is one of the biggest parts of my life. And I think realizing that what's easiest for you or more convenient isn't necessarily the path to take, which is what you were just saying. It's easy to be two ships passing in the night when your life is chaos.
We have the same story. My husband would ask my opinion on things and I would be like really distracted with the kids or whatever it was. And I wouldn't get to it. And I thought about like, if a client asked me to do that, I would get back to them. I'm putting even like just the respect that I would give my client, I'm not extending to my husband. And I was not proud of that. And it's like, I need to like love the fact that he respects my perspective enough to like bring it to me. That is a way that he's showing me love. Tell me your care situation. They're in daycare.
Yeah, they're in.
Oldest is in school.
We're in daycare, but they're both in school now. So they were both in daycare starting at 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
It's the earliest your kids can go to daycare, if you guys didn't know. Fun facts. Fun facts here. I took 6 weeks maternity.
Would you do it the same way again?
That's such a tough question. I don't know. Sometimes think maternity leave really wasn't my thing, right? Like I'm a very practical person and it felt kind of like La La Land. And I was like, the faster I snap back into my own personal reality, the better headspace I get into, rather than this fear of how's this going to work when I go back to work? And plus there's like no one to hang out with and like you're just by yourself. However, that was like with my first kid. Now that I know what it's like with the kids, I think I would cherish more time. But those are some of my early memories of your kids are some of the hardest and best times. I think I made the right decision for me at the time. My kids both went to daycare at 6 weeks, we've never had a nanny or help. We've just kind of piecemealed it through. They go to aftercare. So my kids are both, so Zara's in first grade now. She goes to aftercare. I pick her up by 6. And then Jones goes to a Montessori academy here. He's 3. I pick him up by 5:30. So we've relied more on the school systems than help. I've started to debate the help, the more activities and the driving and stuff. My fear is that if I give myself an inch to not show up, I won't. Right now, I don't have an excuse. Like I've got to pick up my kid and I've got to take her to dance. I don't have an excuse to not show up. I block those days off my calendar. We're not having after school work. I'm not doing after school work stuff. But if I had someone else doing that, then I would just be like, oh, well, I don't have to be home at this time. And then I would keep pushing it later and later.
I was the same. I took very short maternity leaves, except for my last one. It's the benefit of having a baby at 40. I think feels very on trend right now to talk about having like 3, 6, 9-month maternity leaves. It's a bananas planet for me to think about. In some ways, I feel most myself when I'm in my schedule, my plan, this balance between mom, work, and personal life. And I also think that there's like this thing that like maybe I should feel bad that that's how I feel. I have learned as my kids get older, I was getting what I needed from them, but I started to realize at a place where they weren't getting what they needed from me, which when they're little, it is like, you're fine, you're safe. You know what I mean? They don't have a way to tell you. But as the girls got older, I started to realize, oh, your plumb line doesn't feel confident because you need different things from me. I'm steadying for you, and I'm not showing up in a way that you need. For a hard driver mom, this realization that like I need to release a little bit in what I would most prefer with my time for what you need for my time. It was all of a sudden I was like, oh crap. Because I didn't need more time with them.
They need more time with you.
They needed more time with me.
I am getting that a lot from Zara right this year for the first time ever. Why were you the only mom that didn't stay at Girl Scouts? Or why are you gone so much? My goal for this year, I think I told you, is to say no more. And it's funny because my perspective on that changing a little bit because I listened to one of your podcasts and you said, don't be afraid of a life of more ands. Mm-hmm. And that resonated with me that actually those two things go hand in hand. When I say my goal was to say no more, my goal was to say no more to things that don't matter. Because like I was away from my kids multiple nights a week. So now I set boundaries there. It's only 1 to 2 max. And it was directly because of the feedback I was getting from her the last 6 months of this new social dynamic with girls at school and just wanting to talk to her mom about certain things that she just doesn't, I wouldn't say she doesn't feel comfortable with Jordan, but it's just girl talk, the girl time. That was kind of eye-opening for me because I felt like, hey, we hang out all the time. We're with you guys all the time. We plan fun trips. We do all this stuff. But maybe I wasn't turning around and asking her what she wanted to do or if she wanted more one-on-one time. I think we also lumped our kids together a lot. And I have a boy who's super hyper and she can get frustrated with him. So now we do individual date nights.
Let me tell you one thing I did when I realized, because I traveled a lot when my kids were that age, I started to realize that part of it was expectation. So I would print the month out on the fridge and I would put a green like X or check or something on the days I was home and red X's or whatever on the nights I was going to be gone. And some of it was that. And also it helped me see how many nights I was actually gone. So if your goal is like, I don't want to be gone more than 5 nights in a month or whatever it is, then you like literally have a record of like, last 2 months I was gone 5 nights, then it was 7, then it was 4, or last 2. Yeah. Like it kind of holds you accountable even to your own priorities. But I started to realize when they could see it, they felt more in control.
That's so Zara to a T, actually.
Yeah. Well, my oldest is real.
She needs to know the plan. If we go off the plan, it's, she's like, that's a really good idea. I'm definitely going to do that.
My oldest is the same way. And so she would get so thrown off on the regular over here. Like, I don't know. I just like switch all the time. And that was so unnerving to her. And so I started to realize if she could see it, she felt in control. And then it was such less of a deal. It didn't feel like a surprise. So that was a big thing. I did that for a long, long, long time. And we still, Sunday nights, the girls are like, what are the expectations for the week? Which nights I'm going to be late? What's going to be dinner? Like that kind of stuff is still
to have
really
a
part of our family culture.
The things you're doing that we need to do is, Jordan and I do the same thing every Sunday. I'm like, where are you at this week? Where am I at this week? Hey, you've got the kids, this and this. And our lives are on like a Outlook calendar. Honestly, if it's on my calendar, it's not happening. I mean, I'm going to forget. I put every little school thing on there, every late start, which is ridiculous that it's every other Wednesday or something like that, is on my calendar because that's just how I function. But what you're saying that we are not incorporating, which I think would be great, is roping the kids into the schedule and making them feel they have some ownership of it too. And I want them to be independent. I think the benefit of being a working mom is, and maybe just with the limited capacity for me to remember things, is I put a lot on Zara. If it's pajama day at school tomorrow, you need to remember that. If your library books are due on Monday, you need to remember that.
So have you and Jordan figured out how you best connect?
Yes. And I think that the first key that we are really good about is we have a date night ourselves every other week. Because the thing you talked about is like having inopportune times for conversation. He always wants to do it like at dinner with the kids when the kids are yelling a million things and they're interrupting us and I can't follow. I think what we realized is we need time to be Jordan and Zainab. And anytime we're around the kids, we default to mom and dad. And I think that dynamic will change as they get older, but our kids are younger, so they need us more now. So we, even if it's like we're going out to eat, just us two, we need that time. And the second thing, is we'll try to do one thing that we both do. So that's like another thing we can kind of share. The bigger thing is like we're huge sports fans, so that's always a huge dynamic for us to like just even go watch a game together or something like that. What I realize he needs more is more of my undivided attention. And really, we need to just figure out the environment that we can accomplish that in. Because also what I was doing a lot is I was like bringing him to like work events or like work schmoozing events, like even fun ones like Zubilation, and being like, oh, it's a date night. That's not a date night. I'm all over the board. I'm talking to a lot of people. I would do that all the time. And I think it was important for him to voice like, hey, I like coming to these things with you. I really do. But like, let's not say that this is a substitute for us spending time together. Because just because I'm here doesn't mean that's quality time.
For me, I found I could only be totally present for JR when we were like away, out of the state, on a trip. And it takes me like 36 hours every time. I think of like the plan I'm going to put together to lose 20 pounds. It's not going to happen. Like, I'm just like cramming. It's like, oh, I'm just like being psycho. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, just chill out. And I kind of discover your own fun and funniness a little bit. It's like, I feel like I'm doing things all the time. It's like, I don't know that I'm fun or funny. But then I'm like, I'm fun. And I'm I'm kind of
But he always finds you kind of fun and funny, right? Because you
Yes, that's true. But I think I'm able to really be completely present for him. And we found it only happens really, really, really when we go somewhere.
So how often do you go somewhere then?
We're in the habit of, we generally take like a 5-day trip in the first quarter of the year, just because it's a hard season in Indiana. It just sucks here.
It sucks. And
so usually do about 5 days. And then in the fall, we usually do a long weekend, like maybe 4 days, like a Friday, Monday. So we're not missing, 2 4-day weeks kind of a deal. And one is usually like skiing snow active. And then one is more, or before all the craziness, we would love to go to like New York City and go to the theater or discover new cities together. We'd love to eat our way through like progressive dinners. And
yes.
Sometimes we'd go have like a second entree after a show, like just like fun, and like just explore and not have a plan. That's what we have found. It's the only way for me to not be in performance mode.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to take more trips without the kids, for sure. That's also a goal.
And if you start with just once a year, just to be like, you're like, that was awesome. Like we really have
feel
fun together.
Recharged.
Yeah.
And you kind of revert back to like, ultimately we were
dating. Yeah,
you're dating. You're each other's best friends. And I think you guys have similar situations. Like I met Jordan when I was 20 years old. Like we have like grown up together. Like I was like a child, really immature person when we met and just really evolved together. But this is the other thing you said to me. I remember it is almost everyone gets remarried in their lifetime. You either choose to remarry the person you're with because you guys are different people, or you choose to kind of go the other way. And I remember thinking that's so true because we are so fundamentally different than the people we were at, not fundamentally, but like you become adults. And then you wake up and you're, in your 30s or almost 40s. And do you choose to be with this person every day and make that commitment? I always tell him that I choose to be with him every day. And I think sometimes he likes to hear the word need. But I think we just view those words differently. I definitely do need him. But the thing is, like with my mom, going all the way back to that, I'm not financially dependent on you. If we needed to go separate ways, we could. But I enjoy who we are together better than who we are apart. So I'm choosing you every day.
My grandma says love is a choice.
I think that's a way to look at it.
And that doesn't mean that it isn't sometimes an emotion, which I think is an interesting, because sometimes also the emotion is there. But oftentimes it is, if you're going to do something for 60 years, 70, like it's going to be a choice. But sometimes you do have the added benefit of the emotion. What advice would you give your 24-year-old self?
Slow down. I'm an impulsive kind of person. And some of the best things, the best moments in life I've experienced just slowing down.
What does fear say to you today?
You can't have it all. I'm a firm believer that I can have it all. I can be that fantastic wife, mom, have a successful career. But the fear in me is that I'm going to fail at one of them. Or like you said, don't be fearful of a life of ands. And that's kind of what sometimes I'm fearful for. You throw one more ball in the air, can you handle it? Or which one can you be good at all three at the same time? Which one fails? And it would be unacceptable to me to have any of them fail. And I think that's my number one fear.
What does fear tell you you'll have to sacrifice if you actually believe you can have it all?
I think my family always sacrifices. You try to make changes in that perspective, but it's always, I feel like they're the ones who suffer, for sure. And, on that note, I think I was talking to another friend about this, is we're working so hard right now in our jobs and building our career and building all this stuff at the time of their lives where like they're with us for a finite period. And you turn around, you've reached that pinnacle and they're 18 and they're leaving. And you're like, was it worth it? Was it worth it that maybe in a time that they needed you the most, you were busy building this life for them? I mean, that's ultimately what we're doing. I mean, there's a big personal gratification I get from being successful as well, but at what cost? And my number one fear is I would choose wrong and they'll be gone and I can't have that time back.
There is sacrifice that has to be made along the way. Definitely. One of Jim Collins' books talks about there's luck events in our lives. A luck event that I have is my kids are all healthy. And another luck event that I have is that they're natural learners. Yeah. Like school is not a struggle. I don't have to sit with them for hours on end, and they don't have appointments. And like those are not things that take up space in my life. But what would I give up if one of those things weren't true? So if they had a really hard time learning in school or needed additional support or physically or mentally they had it, something that was wrong, I would totally understand that would have to create changes at work. I also, as they change, I had to say, like, if I see that they need me, will I make different decisions? It's like, I will. So along the way, as the girls grew, and as I would see like that they needed me in different ways, I kind of took myself off the road at some point. My husband and I made the decision, during school in particular, us both being gone overnight is a train wreck. Okay, it's never going to happen. I don't care what it is. We made that decision as a family. That was kind of the first level of it. And then it got to the place where me being gone overnight more than once a month was just hard on them. And it's like, okay, I just have to take myself off the road. Well, what does that mean for my career? It's like, I don't really care. This is what the girls need from me. And I felt our spirits, I felt that we weren't in sync. And so I was willing to look at that and say, like, what's going weird? It's like, it's not really that I need to quit my job. We kind of be extreme. It's that it's really hard on them when I'm gone at night. That's really unsettling for them as they get into school and more uncertainty with friends and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess I would take it to like, well, if I suddenly found out they had a disability and I had to change my schedule, I would do it. Are my words making sense?
No, it does. It makes perfect sense. It's like, you don't need a grand event to make that change.
Right. But sometimes we do. And so I was like, I didn't want there to have to be a grand event. And so I would say that in my head. But if there was something so acute physically that was wrong with them, I would change my schedule. Why wouldn't it when I see it so acute about their spirit? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
And so then I was like, well, I will just accept the consequences of what it means to not be gone at night, because I'm not willing to accept the consequence of being gone because I see it so hard on them. And so I would let the consequence be in my career. And what I found is that there was almost never as gigantic of a negative reaction as I expected on the work side.
That is the number one learning. I think part of the fear of giving up some of the stuff at work, not giving up, but like limiting, like, I'm only going to do drinks 1 or 2 nights a week with people that I need to meet. And I'm only going to be on a couple of boards, and is more all in my head than reality.
My mission for Scared Confident is to help women confidently pursue a life of and I want to be available to you. I'm passionate about vulnerably stepping into my stories so that it can help women. This is about creating the resource that I wish I had as I was going through this journey. So if you have questions, comments, or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Text me at 317-350-8921. So here's what this tool is. It's a personal number that I've set up for Scared Confident. It comes straight to my phone, and it allows me to see and us to interact with one another like directly. So I can text you back and answer your questions. So this opportunity to be able to interact directly, not necessarily have to jump through the algorithms of social media, but have a really direct conversation and relationship is what I'm really excited about with this project of Scared Confident. If we help just one, the whole project will be worth it. So 317-350-8921 is the way that you can get in touch with me. And don't think your question's stupid. It's not. We're all wondering the same thing. So step into courage, ask for help, and help other people who have the exact same questions normalize their journey. Thanks for sharing this with me.